In tonight's story, betrayal runs deep, but revenge runs deeper. You're listening to Revenge with Jack, where justice always finds its way. I didn't sign up for this. 5 words, blinking under a screenshot of a hollow balance. Our joint account looked like a wintered field, scalped down to stubble, nothing left to harvest. My name is Evan Cole, 32, head mechanic at Lawson & Sons in Spokane. 4 hours earlier, in a room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and lemon, a doctor had spoken in tidy phrases. Lymphoma, stage 2, treatment options, survival rates. Treatable, she said. A long road, she added. The kind of road where the mile markers are lab results and the scenery is fluorescent light. I called Sienna from the parking lot. Steel sky. A sparrow chipping on a lamppost like it hadn't gotten the memo. Can you meet me at home? We need to talk. She said she was busy. Errands. Back later. Her voice was a hallway that didn't echo. When I got home, half the closet was air. Hangers swung like metronomes with no song to keep. Her suitcase was gone. The wedding photo disappeared from the nightstand. A clean rectangle of dust, negative space where our smiles used to be. Then the text came, along with the screenshot. Every dollar we'd saved in 5 careful years shifted into an account with only her name. $38,000. The number lay there like a dare. I stared until my eyes watered and the phone blurred into a small, bright stone. I typed back 2 words. Take care. Not because I meant it fully, not because I didn't. Because some part of me still wanted to leave a door cracked, even as she was nailing boards across hers. I took a beer to the back deck. The evening was soft, a bruise of purple over the pines. I didn't cry, didn't hurl the bottle or tear anything. I just let the air move through me. Felt something shift inside, like the house adjusting at night, with settling, screws finding their thread. The cancer, I could name and face. The leaving was nameless. A hole that rearranged the furniture of my life. Mark from next door leaned over the fence, forearms sun-browned, lawnmower idle behind him. Everything all right? Saw Sienna peel out earlier, car packed up. He kept his voice low, the way people talk near a sleeping child. Got some health news, I said. She didn't take it well. He nodded. Didn't pry. That's a kind of kindness people forget to count. Let me know if you need anything. Jenna makes a mean casserole. Appreciate it, I said. The word felt small, but true. When he drifted back to his yard, I went inside and set my beer on the kitchen counter, where the light turned the bottle neck into amber. I opened the drawer where we kept warranties and spare keys and pulled out a manila folder Uncle Ray had given me last month. He retired from estate planning, but habits don't retire with you. Everybody needs their papers in order, he'd told me, tapping the folder. Especially when you're married. Protect each other. I hadn't understood then that the verb could flip. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just held it, feeling the weight. Paper is light, but what it stands for can be heavy. I thought of my mother's voice from years ago. Backup plans, budgets, keep your head down and your hands honest. I thought of Sienna's voice from this afternoon, all errands and later, and how later can be a door with no knob on this side. Outside, the sunset folded into night. A dog barked 2 streets over, then the quiet sealed back up. I finished the beer, rinsed the bottle, put it in the bin like a person who still remembered how to do ordinary things. On the table, my phone lit once, then went dark. I let it. I stood there with the folder and the hush and the ache. Somewhere, a road had just gotten longer. Somewhere else, one had ended. I turned off the kitchen light and, in the reflection on the window, saw myself, tired, smaller at the edges, but still here. That would have to be enough for now. I met Sienna at my buddy Drew's wedding back in 2016, in a barn strung with Edison bulbs and hay dust that turned the light to honey. She laughed at something the DJ said, and I remember thinking her laugh had clean edges, like glass just out of the rinse. She was a paralegal at a downtown firm, smart the way a good wrench feels in the palm, balanced and sure. I was the guy who kept engines from giving up at stoplights. We danced twice, then sat on the steps outside where the night smelled like cut alfalfa. I told her I liked machines because they told the truth. Compression, spark, fuel, air. No pretending. She said she liked paper because it could change a life. The law is just a story we agree to believe, she said, tapping her temple. Her hands were neat, nails pale, a quarter moon of polish. Mine were cracked and stained even after scrubbing. We both looked down and laughed, the first of many times our hands explained us before our mouths did. 6 months later, we signed a lease together. A year after that, we said vows in a courthouse with a judge who wore kind, tired eyes. We saved the slow way. Cash envelopes, price-checked groceries, second-hand furniture that I sanded and stained while she picked fabrics and colors from online mood boards. When we found the fixer-upper, it had good bones and a roof that sighed when the wind changed. Weekends turned into a rhythm, me under sinks and behind walls, tracing copper and coaxing old wood back to straight. Sienna with paint decks fanned like swatches of sky, arranging rooms the way magazines arrange a life you think you can buy. She posted before and after photos, captions bright and clever. People loved the story, two young strivers turning a tired house into a glossy dream. Strivers, such a city word for what felt to me like just living. My dad was gone by the time I was 13, an accident on I-90 that taught me the math of suddenness. Mom, a public school teacher with a frugal heart, raised my sister Claire and me on casseroles, coupons, and the kind of faith that doesn't ask to be thanked. She taught me to stack cash in an envelope marked, "When the sky falls," to change my own oil, to keep promises like spare fuses in a glove box. After she passed 2 years ago, those small rules became the fence that kept me from drifting. Sienna came from a different map. Her parents floated her tuition, swapped her cars out every few years like phone upgrades, and surprised us with a chunk of the down payment. They were generous in ways that counted and cutting in ways that also counted. Her father, a corporate attorney with a permanent cologne of confidence, introduced me as Sienna's husband at firm parties, like my name was a role and not a person. He wasn't cruel, just careful about hierarchies, the way some men are. I told myself I didn't mind. That contentment was its own kind of ambition. Looking back, the hairline cracks were there, delicate at first. A comment after dinner. Don't you want to do something more with your life than fix cars? An aside about a college roommate's husband making partner, the vacation home going up on the Sound. A day trip to Seattle that turned into Sienna leaning over a map on her phone, talking about opportunities and culture and how Spokane felt small sometimes. I resisted. My job was steady, our friends were good, the house nearly ours. She grew quiet when I said it. Quiet isn't the same as peace. It's just noise you can't hear yet. We kept going. The way countertops gleam while joists beneath them carry hairline strain. Hands again, mine nicked and bandaged, hers perfect crescents tapping a screen. We loved each other. We did. Love can be a barn full of beautiful lights and also a roof that whispers of leaks whenever it rains. I didn't listen closely enough to the whisper. Or maybe I did and decided to believe the bright bulbs instead. The first warning didn't beep or flash. It was a rectangle of cardstock tucked in Sienna's purse when I was hunting for a stray lip balm she swore had rolled under the seat. A leasing agent's smile printed beside a Seattle skyline. Floor plans circled in pen. A phone number written twice, like a name you want to remember. I held it long enough for the edges to warm in my hand. Then I slid it back where I found it, as if ignorance were a form of trust. That night I called Uncle Ray. I told him I wanted to be better about paperwork, that thing he's always preaching. He didn't ask why, just said, "Good instincts, kid," and walked me through lists, titles, deeds, beneficiary forms. He made legal language sound like tools. Socket, ratchet, torque. We talked about the Mustang, the 69 I'd rebuilt on weekends, the unfinished DMV update that would have added Sienna as co-owner. File it only when you're sure, he said, and the word sure felt heavier than it used to. I noticed other small things. Sienna started leaving later and returning later, trailing a scent I couldn't place. Not perfume, more like the ghost of a department store. Her phone learned to live face down. She talked about Seattle like a city that had been waiting on her porch this whole time, patient and glittering. I countered with what I knew: steady hours, good neighbors, a mortgage we were taming month by month. We spoke in parallel, two rails that never met. The night before the biopsy, we ate at our kitchen table under the humming pendant I installed the first week we moved in. She told me about a co-worker's promotion in the same bright tone she used for weather. I chewed slow to keep from speaking fast. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyes on her plate. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." Tired was easier to carry than afraid. She nodded, relieved to step around whatever lay in the middle of the room. People say love is conversation. Sometimes it's silence dressed as mercy. I slept shallow and woke early, watched the ceiling gather gray. At the clinic, A nurse marked my skin with a purple pen and explained the steps like she was reading me a bedtime story no one wants. The word lymphoma waited somewhere ahead, but I wasn't there yet. When they said I could go, I walked slow through the parking garage, each footstep a hollow drum. I called Sienna from a concrete stairwell that smelled like rain when there wasn't any. "Can you meet me at home? We need to talk." She said she had errands. A voice is a map. Hers drew me a route that didn't lead back. There's a way illness enters a marriage that no brochure captures. It doesn't kick the door, just touches the hinges and waits to see which squeal. I'm not blaming her. I'm not blaming her. People like to say crises reveal who we are. Maybe they just amplify whatever frequency was already there. For some couples, it's faith. For others, it's distance that finally finds its own name. After the doctor said stage 2, after the pamphlets and the nodding, I walked to the car and called again. I told her I'd be home soon. I told her I wanted to sit together, even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. On the drive, my mind ran the soft calculus of what-ifs. What if we sell the house? What if I can't work as much? What if we move closer to Claire? What if this is our chance to learn how to hold the hard parts better? What if I'm making a mountain out of test results? What if love is wider than this? I turned the key in our front door and found our life mid-exit. Hangers still rocking. The negative space where our wedding photo had been. And 40 minutes after my call from the parking lot, a transfer cleared, our savings tilting into her name. When the text arrived, I didn't sign up for this. I understood that sometimes the quiet you've been saving up becomes a sentence. I answered with 2 words and a breath that felt borrowed. Later, Uncle Ray would point at the timestamp like a lawyer, and I'd nod like a witness. For now, I traced the outline of what had been and tried not to hate the part of me that still wanted to ask if she had eaten, if she had enough gas, if Seattle looked as bright up close as it did from far away. Chemo day felt like a Tuesday pretending to be a mountain. The infusion center was too bright, all polished linoleum, and a TV in the corner speaking daytime kindness at low volume. A volunteer offered blankets warmed in a cabinet that breathed out bakery heat. Nurse Mara found my vein like she was finding a road she'd driven 100 times. Tourniquet, alcohol, a soft little pinch. She guided me to a recliner near the window. Outside, a line of furs kept their own counsel. Inside, machines murmured and clicked, a hush of crickets built from plastic. "Is your ride waiting?" Mara asked, already taping the 4. "Took an Uber," I said. "My wife's out of town." Her eyes paused on my face. Not pity, an inventory of weather. She patted my arm, light as a moth landing. "First one's the hardest. We'll get you through." I nodded. Didn't trust my throat. Across from me, a man in a flannel cap slept with his mouth open, a paperback sliding off his lap. An older woman knit, needles whispering. The bag above me gleamed like pale tea. People tell you chemo is poison and cure. They don't say it also teaches you how slowly a drop can travel. I watched each minute, and each minute watched me back. The Uber driver home talked about her grandson's t-ball game. One eye on the mirror the way good people check in without prying. I said the boy must be fast. She said, fast enough to chase the sun. It sounded like something my mother would have written on a sticky note and tucked in my lunch. At the house, afternoon pooled in the foyer. On the porch, a casserole in a foil pan wearing a note in Jenna's careful hand. Made too much. Enjoy. We both knew it wasn't true, but truth has more jobs than accuracy. I set it on the counter, peeled back the foil. Steam opened like a small prayer. I took a bite. My body voted no. I ended up on the bathroom floor, cheek to tile, listening to my breath skid. The grout felt cool and factual. There is strange comfort in a surface that doesn't lie. I rinsed my mouth and sat with my back to the tub, counting the small sounds of the house. The fridge's hum, the shy click of cooling ducts, a branch knocking the siding twice like it had something to add. I wondered how many people did this part alone. Not the IVs and scans, but the afters, the ordinary privacies that become immensities. We are a nation allergic to asking for help. Men especially. We are trained to lift and to swallow, to fix what can be fixed and to pretend the rest is minor. When my stomach stopped arguing, I shuffled to the couch and pulled a blanket over the ache. The phone lay on the coffee table, face down, a coin I was afraid to flip. I turned it over and called Claire. My sister answered on the second ring, her voice still threaded with Portland rain. "Hey, Ev, you okay?" I told her about the diagnosis, the timing, the closet's negative space, the 5-word text, the money gone like someone had clicked save as and deleted the original. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled like a word she'd been holding. I'm driving up. Now. Not yet, I said. Give me a couple days. I need to move some things around. Talk to Uncle Ray. Figure out the basics. The basics, she echoed. Food. Rides. Human presence. She was quiet for a beat. I'm coming this weekend, then. Non-negotiable. Okay, I said. The word loosened something tight in my chest. This weekend. After we hung up, the room grew simple again. I texted Mark to say thanks for the casserole, even though it was Jenna's hand. He replied with a thumbs up and, holler if you need a ride tomorrow. No fuss, no sermons. I closed my eyes. Behind them, the infusion room glowed. A knit needle clicked. A drip kept its count. A nurse's hand rested on my forearm, steady, brief, enough. I slept, not deeply, but in honest pieces. When I woke, the sky beyond the blinds was the soft gray of primer, the color you lay down before you lay down the color you choose. Morning came like a dull tool, serviceable, not kind. I brewed coffee because ritual steadies the hand. While it dripped, I called the bank. A hold music guitar, tried to be cheerful. When a representative finally came on, I gave the details, the joint account, the date, the suspicion that wasn't a suspicion anymore. She clicked through screens. I could hear the database thinking. Yes, Mr. Cole, she said gently. There was a transfer for the full balance to an external account under the other account holder's name. Timestamped 40 minutes after your last ATM withdrawal yesterday. 40 minutes after I called Sienna from the parking lot. The number lined up like a bead on a wire. Sadness is a fog. Purpose is a line. I felt the line pull taut. I drove to Uncle Ray's place with a folder under my arm and that thin new feeling in my jaw that meant I was done apologizing to myself. Ray opened the door in slippers and a flannel shirt that had seen better winters. His living room smelled like coffee and old paper, the kind of atmosphere where decisions are made slowly and kept. Kid, he said, and pulled me into one of those quick holds men permit themselves when the rest would break us. We cleared his dining table and made piles. Property records. Insurance. Pay stubs. The will he'd helped me update after Grandpa died. I set my phone down with Sienna's text face up. He read it once, then again, jaw working like he was unscrewing a stuck bolt. All right, he said, putting on his glasses. We're going to make this boring. That was his way of saying safe. He tapped the bank statement. This aligns with your call log. We printed my phone records. We added the oncology intake sheet with the date. We wrote a simple timeline on a legal pad. Call to Sienna, bank transfer, text. He drew little squares by each line like chess squares, then set his pen on the first one. Evidence placement, he said. We're not in check. We're just developing pieces. We listed assets out loud. The house, the Mustang, the inherited land up north from Grandpa, pending sale, the small 401k from the job I had before Lawson's. Safe deposit box, he asked. At first Cascade. Deed, Mustang title, Grandpa's will copy, I said. Good. We'll close it. Open a new one in your name only. Take the originals with you today. He wrote that down. Mustang title? I never filed the co-owner update, I said, saying it felt like finding an extra socket in the bottom of a drawer. Papers in the box, and signed. File a corrected title now. Keep it solely in your name, he said. No gaps, no loose ends. He looked at me over the rims. This isn't vindictive. It's protective. I nodded. Memory flashed, not like a movie, but like smell. Gasoline sweet in the garage the summer I was 17. Dad showing me a carburetor exploded on a rag. It's all passages, he said, grease black under his nails. Air and fuel. If something's blocked, it floods or starves. Clear the line, and the engine breathes. I didn't know then how many kinds of passage a life would require you to clear. Now, sitting at Ray's table, I could almost hear the soft click of parts going back where they belonged. We drafted a list on the legal pad and underlined each item. Close and move the safe deposit box. File the Mustang title in my sole name. Pause the land sale until we were certain of protections. Review beneficiaries on everything. Document, 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 dates, times, calls. He had me sign letters authorizing releases for bank records. He scanned Sienna's text into a neat PDF and labeled it Exhibit A with the calm of a man who believes in labels. By afternoon, we were done enough to feel like starting was possible. You want to call a lawyer, too? Ray said. Someone who won't blink. I have a name, Olivia Park. Steady. Unimpressed by theatrics. Tomorrow, I said. The fatigue was back, a tide I couldn't order around. Today I'll do the box and DMV. Good, he said, and slid a pen toward me. Initial here, and here. The pen moved. The line held. We didn't talk about Sienna except as a proper noun attached to forms. It was a relief to be boring. On my way out, Ray squeezed my shoulder. This part you can fix, he said. The other part, your body, let the doctors do what they do. But your life on paper? We can torque that to spec. I drove to the bank with a folder full of squares that felt like pieces finally taking their places. In the lobby's quiet, the vault door side open. Steel and patience. I turned my key, watched a clerk turn hers. Inside the small metal drawer, a deed, a title, a will, the neat bones of a life. I stacked them into my bag and felt, for the first time since the diagnosis, a little air move through. Not victory, just a passage cleared. The engine almost breathing. At the DMV, the air tasted like printer dust and long afternoons. I took a number, sat beneath a bulletin board of smiley reminders, and held the corrected title like a small shield. When they called me up, the clerk was young, freckles sketched across her nose as if the sun had been practicing. She typed, nodded, stamped in 3s. You'll get the updated title in the mail, she said, sliding my copy back. Then, softer, as if talking to the stapler. Some people check these things fast. You might want your mail on hold for a week. She didn't look up. I did. Her eyes flicked once to the line of glass offices where a manager in a blue tie pretended not to watch anyone. Thanks, I said. It was both advice and warning dressed as small talk. I hadn't cleared the parking lot before my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. A text, Sienna's new voice. You changed the Mustang title? That car is half mine. You put my name on it. I stood by my hood, sunlight lifting the metallic in the paint, and counted 6 beats. Someone was feeding her my steps, the ink barely dry on them. Uncle Ray's words from yesterday steadied in my ear. We're going to make this boring. We were. But gossip runs on caffeine. I called Ray from the lot. She knows, I said. Already. Her father has friends everywhere you wish they didn't, he said, not surprised. So we stopped speaking in straight lines. How? Let's set a table with the wrong meal, he said. I could hear paper moving, the sound of his strategy, a slow shuffle, not a slap. If they're watching, give them something to watch. Meanwhile, move what matters where they can't see. On my drive home, I rolled the idea in my mouth like a bolt between finger and thumb. A feint. Cars teach you. Not every movement is about speed. Some are about misdirection, left turn signal, right-hand cut. I parked and dialed the realtor handling Grandpa's land. I stood by the open window while a breeze carried the dry sweetness of cut grass. Could we pause the listing? I asked, careful with my tone. Medical situation. I'm exploring other options for liquidating assets. I said the last part louder, like a stage whisper meant for a back row I couldn't see. Of course, Evan, she said. I'll note it. Next call. The investment firm that held my old 401k. A man named Derek explained penalties in the calm voice people use to describe storms still offshore. I asked about early withdrawals, about timelines, about whether I could accelerate anything because of medical bills. I let that phrase hang, metallic as loose change. He put me on hold twice, then returned with brochures he offered to email. Please do, I said, and spelled my address slowly, distinctly, like I wanted the echo to travel. Then I waited. The waiting had texture now, grit fine as flour. 2 days later, the letter arrived from Sienna's attorney, the seal heavy with confidence. Their demands widened as if confidence were a stretchable fabric, a portion of any proceeds from the sale of inherited property, a fair division of all retirement accounts. Inheritance. Retirement. The exact fruit I'd left glowing on the lowest branches. I brought the letter to Ray's kitchen, set it on his table like a caught fish. He read it once, then again, then leaned back and exhaled through his nose, smiling without joy. They took the bait, he said. Part of me wanted to punch air, to celebrate being the spider for once. But the celebration felt thin and noisy. Now what? I asked. Now we stop performing, he said. We file first. We show our homework. And we moved quietly. He tapped the legal pad squares we'd drawn, placed a neat check mark in one. You played it slow. Keep playing it slow. That night, I sat on the porch with the letter folded in my pocket like a luck charm I didn't believe in. The neighborhood was rinsed with sprinkler smell. Across the fence, Mark strung a solar light in his maple, little sun's catching. I thought of the DMV clerk's warning, of managers with ties, of fathers with keys to rooms I'd never enter. Then I thought of how engines breathe when you clear the passage, not loudly, not triumphantly, just a deeper, steadier idle. I wanted that sound for my life. Slow, durable, right? Ray called on a Tuesday when the light in my kitchen was the color of weak tea. We got the documents, he said, voice flat like a level set on a shelf. Subpoena came through quicker than expected. Want to guess where your money went? Tell me, I said, already braced. The way you square your shoulders before lifting something you can't put down. She moved the joint balance into a fresh account, he said. Then cut a check for $30,000 to her parents. Same day, 2 hours apart. Memo line blank. I sat. The chair gave a small complaint, with speaking a truth of its own. Why would she do that? Distance, he said. Make it harder to claw back. Judges hate that trick. Juries too, if it comes to it. Paper rustled, his shorthand like tire tracks. The timestamps are tight. And we have her text. And Tessa's statement that Sienna knew about your diagnosis before she transferred a dime. I pictured Sienna's mother folding a check into a purse that cost more than my first car. Pictured her father filing it like an exhibit in a case where the other side never speaks. Can she get away with it? I asked, even though I already knew the engine of the question was fear, not law. No, Ray said. Not for long. A pause, then softer. How are you holding up? I'm a machine that starts, I said. It was the best I could offer. After chemo the next day, I shuffled out into the hospital lot, skin sallow under fluorescent memory. The heat off the asphalt came up through my shoes. A silver BMW idled in a space near the exit, a car that wears its price on the outside. Sienna's father sat behind the wheel, one hand on leather, one on a phone. He watched the sliding doors as if they were a stage. When he saw me, he flicked the phone dark and rolled down the window. The air that came out smelled like cedar and courtroom. Evan, he said, you look unwell. Cancer will do that, I said. Why are you here? Concern, he replied, the word dipped in oil. Sienna is distressed. She says you're being unreasonable about the divorce. Unreasonable. The syllables stacked like boxes he expected me to carry. I almost laughed. Is that what we're calling it? I asked. Unreasonable. She's prepared to be generous given your situation, he said, adjusting a cuff that didn't need adjusting. A fair division of assets, including the house. After she emptied our accounts the day I was diagnosed, I said. After she sent 30 grand to your account to hide the trail. I watched his face when I said the number. It flinched, barely. A horse noticing a fence wasn't where it used to be. She was upset, he said. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, I said. It was choreography. He sighed through his nose, eyes flicking to the Ford tape peeking from my sleeve. Be practical, Evan. You need to focus on getting well, not on a fight you can't afford. And there it was, the misread. They thought I was cornered. Thought I was broke, scared, grateful for crumbs. Thought the man walking slow across hot pavement was the same as a man without options. They didn't know about the paused land sale. The moved documents. The Mustang title corrected before the ink could be claimed by anyone but me. They didn't understand that quiet is not surrender. Sometimes it's torque. Tell Sienna, I said, stepping back from his window. I'll have my response to her lawyer by Friday. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, he said. He must have said that line 1,000 times to softer men. It already is what it is, I said. The heat gathered behind my knees. The sun flashed in his mirror and showed me my own face. Thinner, yes, but sharpened at the edges. A tool honed by use. He put the car in gear, but didn't move. For a second, we were two men in a lot named for donors, bound by money in opposite directions. Then he eased out, turned signal bright and polite. I watched him go, the BMW stitching itself into traffic, and realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. On the walk to my truck, I counted the sounds, a stroller wheel squeaking, a nurse laughing, a distant siren practicing urgency. Under it all, a steadier note, something in me finally settling into its mount. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought I'd trade my dignity for speed. But the thing about engines is simple. If the passages are clear and the timing's right, even a tired machine can surprise you. Thursday smelled like paper and lemon cleaner in Olivia Park's office. A long rectangle of calm above a cafe that roasted beans so dark the scent came up through the vents like courage. Olivia wore a navy suit with the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her desk was neat in a way that wasn't performative, just a workbench ready for actual work. Uncle Ray sat beside me, legal pad open, pen aligned with the margin like a plumb line. "We're filing first," Olivia said, sliding a stack toward me. "Petition for dissolution. Grounds: abandonment during a documented medical crisis, financial malfeasance, and attempts to conceal marital funds through third parties." She spoke like a mechanic names parts. Clear, necessary, nothing extra. "We're attaching exhibits. We will not be coy. Exhibit A, the bank statements, the balance zeroing out 40 minutes after my call from the clinic lot. Exhibit B, call logs. Outgoing to Sienna, incoming from the bank, timestamps circled in a blue pen that looked almost kind. Exhibit C, Sienna's text, 5 words that could sit on a billboard and still be small. Exhibit D, Tessa's emailed statement, careful and sad, confirming Sienna told family about the diagnosis before she moved the money. Exhibit E, the scanned check to her parents for $30,000, memo blank like a silence that incriminates itself. Olivia placed each page in a clear sleeve, the way I slide gaskets into place. No fingerprints, no surprises. "We also include documentation of your treatment schedule and the physician's letter confirming stage 2 and the expected financial impact," she said, and nodded toward a crisp sheet signed in a hand that had saved more people than I would ever meet. "We are not asking for pity. We are asking for law." I initialed where stickers told me to initial. Signed where yellow flags said sign. The pen felt heavier than its weight. Across from me, a framed print read "Due process isn't drama." I smiled before I meant to. "We'll serve them in the morning," Olivia said, capping her pen. "You may get a call for an emergency meeting. If you do, say nothing. Direct them to me." "What do they expect?" I asked. "That you are tired enough to trade truth for speed," she said. "It's a common bet." She leaned back, fingers steepled. "But this is not a long fight unless they insist on making it one. Judges dislike what your wife did. They dislike it more when parents catch the check." Ray slid the letter from Sienna's lawyer, the one demanding inheritance proceeds and a slice of my retirement, toward Olivia. She read it, smiled without showing teeth. "You baited them with rumor," she said. "Nicely done. We'll respond with fact." We stood to leave. At the door, Olivia paused. "Evan," she said, "what we're doing is simple. We are putting your life in order on paper so your body can do what it needs without dodging debris. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, hand me the bag. I like carrying heavy things other people shouldn't have to." On the sidewalk, the air had turned thin and bright. Inside the cafe, a barista laughed, a clean sound that cut through my cotton-headed fatigue. Ray and I didn't speak until we reached the truck. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like the sockets are back on the rail," I said. "Still missing a few, but at least I can see the outline." That afternoon, I went home and slept as if sleep were a task checked off a list. When I woke, the light had moved to the opposite wall, and for the first time in months the room felt aligned with itself. My phone lay face down on the table. I didn't flip it. Somewhere out there, an envelope with my name and her name and a stack of exhibits was finding its way across town. Later, after dinner I could keep, I sat on the porch steps and listened to sprinklers cycle through the block, a soft applause. It sounded like the engine I've always trusted most. Not loud, not fast, just timed right. They scheduled the meeting for Monday at 10, which is the kind of hour people choose when they want to pretend the day is ordinary. Olivia asked me to wear whatever felt like armor. I wore the only jacket I owned that still fit after the weight loss, shoulders a little roomy, sleeves a little long. Uncle Ray waited in the lobby with a legal pad on his knees, the ink line already drawn down the margin like a runway. The conference room had glass walls that made everyone look honest whether they were or not. A carafe of water sweated on a tray. On the far side, Sienna sat straight back beside her lawyer, a narrow man whose glasses did most of the speaking, and her father, cufflinks catching light. Sienna looked rested the way a vacation looks rested. She didn't meet my eyes. I thought of our old nightstand, the ghost rectangle where our wedding photo used to be. Olivia's presence shifted the room the way leveling feet settle a swaying table. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice even. "We're here as a courtesy. I'll be clear." She slid a copy of our filing across the polished wood. Tabs winked like small flags. Sienna's lawyer began with the word misunderstandings, as if the bank had misheard the command to empty our savings, as if a memo line had forgotten to write itself. He tilted his head to show reasonableness. "My client seeks to avoid conflict. A fair division of assets." "No," Olivia said, not unkindly. "Your client abandoned her husband upon his cancer diagnosis, drained their joint account within 40 minutes of his call, and then conveyed $30,000 to her parents. She also attempted to access a safe deposit box without authorization and demanded portions of inheritance and retirement after being tipped to rumors she was meant to hear. We have documentation for each point." She tapped the stack gently, like a nurse tapping a vein. "We're not here to calibrate euphemisms." Sienna's father leaned forward, the scent of expensive cedar announcing him. "Surely we can be reasonable," he said. "Evan is unwell. This approach is hard on everyone." Olivia didn't look at him. She looked at me and then at the papers. "Our terms are simple," she said. "Full return of the $38,000. Ms. Hart relinquishes all claims to the marital home, the 1969 Mustang, the inherited parcel, and Mr. Cole's retirement accounts. She assumes responsibility for his legal fees. In return, we will not pursue criminal charges related to fraudulent conveyance and abandonment." Silence roofed the room. The AC hummed as if it had an opinion. Sienna's fingers pressed together, a steeple small and practiced. Her lawyer's mouth thinned into a careful hyphen. Her father's gaze slid off the page, then back on like a man reconsidering a map he used to know. "This is excessive," he said at last. "This is proportional," Olivia replied. "And generous." I kept my promise and said nothing. That was harder than it sounds. I watched a droplet crawl down the carafe and thought about torque. How you can apply steady pressure and wait for the bolt to give, or you can yank and shear it off. We were choosing steady pressure. "We'll need 48 hours, the lawyer said, clearing his throat. "To confer." "Of course," Olivia said, and closed her folder with the soft finality of a well-fitted door. In the hallway, Ray squeezed my shoulder. "You did good," he said. I said. "Hardest part," he said, and we both knew it was true. 2 nights later, the call came while I was rinsing a plate. Water ran warm across my fingers. The window reflected a thinner man who was learning how to take up his shape again. Olivia's voice carried the verdict cleanly. They accepted. Funds to be returned within 30 days. Claims relinquished. Fees covered. No charges, if they complied. After we hung up, I set the plate in the rack and stood in the hush that follows after a loud appliance quits. It didn't feel like a win. It felt like taking your hands off a steering wheel you've held too tightly for too long and realizing the road will stay under you anyway. That night, I slept through without waking to inventory losses. Morning came pale and undecorated. I brewed coffee, the cheap kind that tastes like getting on with it. And for the first time since the diagnosis, the kitchen felt like a room where life was being lived, not measured. A week later, I signed where a clerk pointed, the divorce papers a stack of conclusions. A corner of me expected trumpets or grief or both. Instead, there was a quiet click, internal and unmistakable, as if some small gear finally found its tooth. 30 days later, a cashier's check sat in my palm, stiff and official, like paper practicing to be metal. 38,000, the amount our years had once spelled. I drove it to the oncology office because I wanted the same hands that taped the first 4 to see something return. Nurse Mara was at the desk, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes that made a person feel measurable in a good way. "You're looking better," she said, and I realized she'd seen versions of me I hadn't wanted to keep. I slid the check under the glass. "Numbers came back good," she added, and for a second I stood exactly between 2 sentences, the one that started in a doctor's office with lemon air, and the one that began here, at a counter that smelled faintly like coffee and sanitizer. I paid down the bills and walked out lighter in places I couldn't point to. A week later, I signed the last divorce papers in Olivia's office. The pen didn't tremble. The room didn't tilt. No thunder. Just a steady scratch, and then quiet. Uncle Ray asked me in the parking lot what came next. "Finish treatment. Get better. Figure out the rest," I said. We stood there with the sun on our faces like two men blessing a map before they fold it. By then, Chemo's fist had loosened. Food stayed. Sleep came. Hair sprouted in patchy fields. The word remission hovered in the future like a town you keep seeing on the highway sign, and hope is real. I kept my hours at the shop as I could. Lawson made sure the insurance stayed. Mark and Jenna watered my plants when I forgot and mowed the strip of lawn between our fences without saying they had. Grief didn't leave. It changed clothes. Quieter, less dramatic, more willing to sit on the porch steps while I drank water at dusk. One afternoon, my oncologist smiled with her whole face. "Complete remission," she said, and the words didn't land so much as lift. Not a forever, but a now. I called Claire first. She cried the way joy cries, messy and bright. Then I called Caleb in Missoula, the friend who'd been telling me for years there was a bay open in his custom shop. "Still got space?" I asked. He laughed. "Got a bench with your name imaginary scratched into it." When I hung up, I felt something shift from maybe to plan. I sold the house in Spokane with less sentiment than I expected. I told myself walls are just walls until you hear laughter echo in them again. With the profit and the land sale finally closed, I found a small cabin outside Missoula. 2 bedrooms, a garage that breathed like a second lung, and mountains that framed the windows so every morning had a backbone. The day I pulled out, Mark and Jenna waved from their driveway. Jenna pressed a casserole into my hands as if endings require starch. "You really okay?" Mark asked. I thought about the man on the bathroom floor, about the silver BMW in a hospital lot, about paper that shielded instead of cut. "Getting there," I said, and meant it. Montana opened like a held breath. The shop smelled like metal and citrus degreaser, the music low, the work honest. In the evenings, the cabin kept its promises, quiet, clean light, the creek nearby stating its case to the rocks. I rolled the Mustang into the garage and lifted the hood. Not to sell, not to share, to keep. I laid my tools in a neat row and touched each with the care you reserve for things that know your history. 3 months into this new map, a text came from an unknown number that wasn't unknown at all. I read Sienna's apology under the hum of the shop lights. I believed parts of it. Maybe believing some parts is what being human asks. I typed 4 words. I survived. Be well. And let them be both door and fence. Then I blocked the number and went home. In the garage, evening settled into the corners like a cat finding its spot. I tightened a bolt until it met the thread cleanly, then set the wrench back into its tray. It made that small, satisfying sound, a quiet click of belonging. People talk about broken things. Some are, beyond saving. Some aren't. I used to think repair was about returning. Now I know it's about becoming. Different, truer, more aligned with what holds. I am not what I was. I am what's next.